Welcome to SEO Conspiracy.com. And today we are starting a brand new series. I call it SEO Stories, which means we will document, we will explain where do we come from, and obviously Google and SEO are interlinked together. And who else then Mr. Bill Swalski could I invite on the podcast?
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Bill. And it's going to be funny because we record this one after the second one where you have long hair, I have different beards. Don't mind us. But yes. Thank you for coming in because I can't find anybody else. And Larry Page didn't want to come in.
He's still on vacation, huh?
Yeah, he has better things to do right now. But the fact is that SEO Stories, nobody really, except you, documented since you started in June 2005, if I'm correct?
On my website, yes.
Yes. June 2005, and we are at the end of 2020, and you've documented everything as far as patents, but not only, because what's on your blog are patents, but
Right.
behind the blog post, there is a tons of research, there's a tons of thought process, and so on.
I tried to bring some of my experiences into this blog post, too.
Yeah, but I don't think people realize that. Well, first, writing a blog post like this, synthesizing scientific concepts into words that SEOs like me could understand is remarkable. But the way you approach it, can you please tell us what goes on before the patent? How you profile the scientist and the scientific papers.
Okay, well, I usually search through patents, the granted patents and the published patents. Published patents are ones that hadn't been granted yet, every week to see what's new. And I'll read through 4 or 5 or 6 or so before I decide to write about any. I'll find ones that I think that are interesting and worth writing about, and I'll cut and paste them into Notepad. And then I'll start going through them, deleting redundant language and legalese, and trying to capture the ideas themselves, adding headings, reorganizing, and doing research on the people and the concepts involved. If the concept is one that there might be white papers on, written by the inventors even, I'll search for them. Because sometimes it's good to have scientific papers to go along with the patents. I've noticed I tend to get better luck finding those if I'm writing about a Microsoft patent than a Google patent. They tend to write papers before they write the patents. I'm not sure why. I guess they have more researchers.
Well, today we will give a lot of value to our listeners here because we will explain to them how Google works and the secrets of SEO. But I want to go back on, you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it's one of the most important things that one should do when doing scientific research. Researching people who did scientific research is the profiling of that scientist.
Right. So one of my favorite patent writers is Tristram Upstill, who has been at Google for maybe 15 years, but at one point in time was the head of core web search at Google. And so when he writes a patent during the time he was the head of core web search on something like how Google might use authority to rank web pages, I want to read that. knowing that he played that role at that company, and when he was the head of Core Web Search, wrote a paper about how authority was being used instead of information retrieval score or PageRank, but rather an understanding that a site like CDC was an authority on medical issues. And he points that out in that patent. This is an authoritative site on medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that because we look at the terms that it ranks for.
Mm-hmm. The patent also is very limiting. The scientific papers, and we were talking before, where sometimes it's too freestyle, the scientific paper, and it feels like the scientist wants to, I don't know, invent its own language or its own way of explaining things.
A lot of times you have scientific papers that are based upon scientific papers that are based on scientific papers. And you fall down rabbit holes that you just can't escape from.
That's the only thing we had. People can't understand how valuable. Let me just show one example. I was planning on showing it later, but we'll start with this, okay? Because SEOs from all over the world, if you want to dream of making millions from reading one blog post, here it is. I read this in 2006 on February 21st, the day it came out, and I applied it on February 22nd. This was the position 0 before the position 0. And the little personal anecdote is that it was the beginning of online poker. It was the rise of online poker, and I was doing, of course, affiliate links with online poker. Everybody was searching about the rules, how to play. I made a lot of money, sir. Thank you very much, Bill, for this post.
So this patent was one of the first that was actually more like a roadmap of how to do a specific thing than so many other patents I've come across since.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I tell you exactly. Okay, you got to put these words and format like this.
You put the term to be defined in one type of font, one color even, but one style. So you bold a defined term, and then you follow with the definition. You explain it in a different font, in a different container, so that Google knows they're not, one's the term being defined and one's the definition. You hesitate, instead of putting C and then colon and then a link, you don't do that because Google then doesn't believe that you're the authoritative source for definitions.
This was 2006, and where we live today with structured data and schema.org is the same move, I guess. It's been the same trend since the beginning.
It's Google understanding the way you're laying out data in a structured format.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, JSON does that, but it's a script not on page. Google Maps, Google Local Search would do that with addresses for businesses. If you put the address in postal code format, Google had a data web crawler, a data wrapper. It would find addresses by looking for the format. And that was a precursor to schema, because they no longer would crawl unstructured data on a page to try to find structure.
Yeah, that was a big move, and it's not going away anytime soon, because when we'll have augmented reality and all that stuff, well, you know what? We need to talk about the past, not the future. So,
okay. Well,
are you having your usual phone call when we start a podcast? Usually you have somebody calling you.
No, it's just on my screen in the bottom right corner is where all the notifications pop up. And it's often the same section where many websites want you to type things.
Oh,
So you're typing and all of a sudden these notifications start popping up and you get a good 24-inch screen and the bottom right inch or two is the most active part of it.
true. But I'm waiting for the call because usually there's somebody trying to sell you something calling right about now. But listen, in a couple of seconds we will talk about PageRank, PageRank, everything you know about PageRank. But let's just say a couple of words about before. What made Google so revolutionary in the world of search engines? What was the big thing compared to before?
The big thing was most search engines were using the information retrieval score to rank web pages, but they would find as many pages that fit that information retrieval score and ranked and give you a big list. And they could have been organizing that list alphabetically for all the value it gave you.
I didn't even study that much the old search engine, but did they even read the content, or was it just the meta information? I'm not sure.
Sites like Alta Vista were reading the content.
Okay, so they were already going that far, but the breakthrough was indeed. And Larry Page didn't really invent the PageRank. It's you will tell us who I forgot his name. The guy who before Larry Page thought about this idea that who is talking about you might also give a good value, a good vote of trust or popularity or whatever you want to call it. So who is talking about you and how they're talking about you translated to the web is what made the difference with Google. But that was just a concept. That was just a project in college. The big breakthrough was when Yahoo partners with Google. Everybody knows the early story of Google in 1996, how instead of selling the technology, they started their own. But it's really when Yahoo started to push forward Google that growth came. And of course, because it was the best product back then, it made a difference. But then the question here is, let's use your paper as a base for the discussion of this famous PageRank. And you wanted to go straight to the 2006 version. But before, yes, just please a word about the Larry Page version. And if I remember correctly, he strongly inspired himself from somebody else's work whom I can't remember.
He was a Chinese inventor who had a similar process. I don't recall his name. But the concept behind PageRank was based upon scientific citations. And scientific papers often contain footnotes. Mm-hmm. And they looked at those footnotes, those citations in those footnotes, and said, okay, the best papers tend to be linked to by footnotes. So what if we did the same type of thing with web pages, where the links from web pages, the best links are the ones that point out the best papers, the best web pages.
Of course. Now it makes sense today, but back then it was groundbreaking.
It was, and the earliest search results from Google actually showed little PageRank indicators within the results themselves, at least in the first provisional patent for Google, for Backrub, that is, which was the original name for Google.
And I was convinced that Amit Singhal was the one who rewrote that version. I was really surprised to read that Amit Singhal had nothing to do with this new PageRank, or did he?
So this was, as we discovered in Hacker News last year, Google stopped using their version of PageRank, the original version of PageRank, in 2006, and they replaced it with a different version. Note.
That's because, I know why the confusion, because Amit Singhal was the head of search back then, and he's the one who said, okay, this is the evolution of search, this is the evolution of PageRank. So that's why I think I was confused. Well, it's been a while. Wow. Now that I'm trying to remember things, I'm like, wow, it's been a bunch of years. 2000, I started in 2004, so to 2020, 16 years. Yeah, I'm getting old. Memory is quitting. But we can agree that Amit Singhal was most definitely a key pillar in the way Google, the search engine, was heading. He really
he came up with some of the key ideas that led to some things like the development of synonyms to replace words in queries. That was something he did early in 2003 or so, that ended up leading to things like Hummingbird and RankBrain even. That process of rewriting.
He had to leave, let's say, abruptly, Google, but he didn't leave. Do you think that this kind of, because now that Prabhakar Raghavan is on board and supposedly will fix everything, there was this floating peer era where Ben Gomez took over, and it seems like they.
So Prabhakar has been referred to as the cleaner.
Yes.
At Google, because it fixes problems.
Yes. He's the one who fixed G Suite, the cloud, ads. So yeah.
But before then, let's go back to the adaptive PageRank.
Yes. Because please explain to us how it works.
So PageRank itself was a very iterative process. It meant going through all these web pages that were linked to each other and calculating a probability that someone might, if they click on any link on a web page following the random surfer model, they might end up at another web page, and that probability was PageRank.
Okay, just hold that thought, everyone. Hold that thought. Random surfer. We'll talk about it in a little bit. So just hold that thought, please. keep on.
So this approach to PageRank, an adaptive PageRank, used a lot more estimation and cut down on iteration of scores. It made it faster. It cut out like 30% of the work.
Yes, I looked at it. It's getting a little bit technical.
Yeah.
It was the end something that they cut out, and basically what they figured out is, well, the web is getting bigger, and we need to save money and time, because PageRank is pretty costly to compute, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you remember the Google Dance?
Yes, it
So the
was.
Google Dance wasn't the event at San Jose. It was the where a bunch of SEOs went to Mountain View and danced. It was the time when Google would batch update web pages every 5 weeks or so. And during the 5 week period, the periods where they would do the updates, rankings for pages would fluctuate wildly. And that was referred to as dancing, Google dancing.
And it was refreshing the toolbar PageRank.
Right. But part of the reason why they had to do batch updating like that was because PageRank was such a computationally expensive process that they had no other choice. And once it got past PageRank being that expensive to do in terms of time and effort and so on, they were able to update pages more quickly.
Now, PageRank in itself, of course, won't build a search engine. But if it's in 2018 that the PageRank patent became open to the public, right? It expired. So now, if a search engine uses that patent, does that make sense? Is it totally outdated? Do you think that Google developed in-house a version that you don't see on patents or anywhere on the publicly?
So Matt Cutts wrote a blog post at one point in time where he admitted that the PageRank that was designed or developed by Lawrence Page, once they applied it, it changed considerably. Because the actual implementation of an algorithm like that is going to face the reality of having to work for lots of people, and they're going to have to make changes to it. So what was originally in the PageRank patent has been updated by continuation patents over the years, but it's likely that actual implementation, making additions. I heard a presentation from, I think, John Mueller a couple weeks ago, where he said in the last year we've done over 3,600 updates to Google's core ranking algorithms. And that's what happened to PageRank, too. They updated it and continues. So if they follow what's in the patent, they can capture the basic ideas, but they actually have to get it working. And that's going to deviate from what's actually on the paper in the patent. The patent's not a roadmap of how something works. It's a discussion of how it works. It describes it in some depth. If you know something about search engines and you read a patent, you get a good sense of how it's working, but it doesn't tell you everything.
There's also a big misconception about PageRank in the SEO industry, because we'll look at it, because you have this. I guess it's from Wikipedia or something like that. This image of the hold on, let me find it. Okay, this is the image I was referring to. This one on the right.
Yeah.
The problem there is here is that it's not really a good interpretation of the PageRank formula, because if you consider that this little note in the PageRank formula where it says the sum of the PageRank of all the pages is equal to 1. We could define it more like a little bit like blockchain. Okay, you have X millions of bitcoins, and then it's like a currency that you exchange amongst each other. But people tend to forget that PageRank has to come from somewhere originally, right? Well, this image is misleading. What do you think?
You remember doorway pages?
Yeah.
So the concept behind doorway pages was to keep on building new web pages to generate new PageRank.
Mm-hmm.
And they would build really low quality pages that linked to another page with certain anchor text to try to get that page being linked to more PageRank and more hypertext relevance. And Google said, no, we're going to start penalizing when that happens, because we don't want people just generating PageRank like that. And it was possible to.
Yeah, I actually personally met those, they were PhDs and engineers, and they never heard of backlinks because they were scrappers, okay? They were scrapping classified, and they were building this humongous website, like millions and millions of pages. I'm talking about, when back in the days when it worked, not anymore. So yeah, they were self PageRank sufficient, I guess. They didn't need external PageRank from coming from. And we will talk more about how to manipulate maybe the PageRank through the reasonable server, but that's coming up in a couple of minutes. Because first,
I think the reasonable server removes some of the ability to manipulate PageRank.
Exactly. But if you do it right, if you don't want to manipulate PageRank, but if you want to do things right, it will work in your advantage. But first, let's start cursing. SEO myth. This channel is called SEO Conspiracy. And the inspiration for this channel was one myth, which is domain authority, which is my pet peeve, Dixon Jones' pet peeves. You have LSI, I think, in number 1, but I think domain authority is probably not too far.
Yeah, it bugs me when someone says it's LSI at work. It's okay. So it's got the word semantic as one of the 3 initialisms.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that everything that's semantic has something to do with latent semantic indexing.
Exactly. But yeah, LSI is definitely your number 1.
If you figure out what that means and define it, I'll listen to you. But most people I ask to do that have no idea.
But domain authority is another big one. And
so domain authority was something that Moz came up with at one point in time as a way to simplify the discussions about getting links from different sites. They wanted to have a way to compare understanding how much value you would get in getting a link from one site compared to another by giving domain authority scores to each of those sites. It was a simplification of how PageRank works. And Google doesn't use domain authority itself. I mean, PageRank is named after Larry Page, which is why it's called PageRank, but it also ranks pages, not websites.
We talk about it at some other point, but maybe we'll need to talk about it again today. You know, the split, the other paper by Sergey Brin. You know what paper I'm talking about? If we have time. But let's stay on this domain authority thing, because here, you wrote about this yeah, please go ahead. Explain to us what's going on here.
So what Google said was we can rank pages based on things like PageRank but then we can re-rank those pages based upon links between each of the pages. So if you have, say, 100 pages that all rank for the same term or phrase, like Christmas trees, and then you look at all the links for the top 100 pages about Christmas trees and look at how they link to each other and re-rank those pages based upon those new links. It's sort of a local interconnectivity concept. And re-rank those, you'll get them ranked differently than your original ranking. And re-ranking is not an unusual concept. I've written a number of posts about how sites re-rank each other. So this concept it's based upon links. Again, it's not doubling the value of PageRank for pages that are linked to other pages. It's saying, okay, we're going to take a narrow scope, a narrow niche, a local ranking based on topics. And we're going to see which are the pages that tend, because they're sort of expert type pages. There are pages about a specific topic and they link to other pages. So the pages they link to are probably worth more.
In plain terms, why do you think, maybe it sounded sexy, maybe SEOs wanted to believe that the domain holds some magic power, or some domains are more trusted or more powerful than others. But where they're mistaken is that the homepage is most likely the strongest page of the website. But if you have a page, let's say you have a link on the page from I don't know, CNN.com, okay, or Fox News, depending on which side you're on. I don't care. But that page is not linked, or WordPress.com is an example. I think you get links from the tags. But if the page is not linked from the rest of the website and it does not receive any backlinks, so it's by itself, where is the value of being attached to the domain? Does it hold?
I missed the Google PageRank toolbar for Internet Explorer, because you can learn a lot about how websites work. I did work on a website that had a page that was higher ranked than the homepage.
I did too.
Ranked higher than the homepage was a page that contained a currency converter.
Smart one.
We had other e-commerce websites linking to our page about our currency converter page, because they wanted their customers to translate the cost of things they had for sale into other currencies. So they know how much they had to pay for something. So that page ranked our homepage, and we carefully linked from that page to other pages that we want to rank higher on our site. We took advantage of that page rank. We were page rank sculpting.
So the example of many like Blogspot.
Yeah.
So you have a Blogspot subdomain, I believe, or no? It's a directory. I even don't remember. No, I think it's a directory.
There's names. Blogspot.
I mean, regardless, if you don't get any love, if you don't get any links from the main domain, whatever prestige or whatever authority score you want to give to that domain, the page is not worth anything. Without internal links, without or backlinks, any page doesn't matter what domain it's attached to. It doesn't have any value. So now, this also the problem I have. So number one, the problem I have with domain authority is people using domain authorities as a currency to sell links and so on. Meaning, okay, here is, I can put a link on Forbes.com. Okay. But the link will be so hidden or not even linked to Forbes. So how does it help? And second, so even if people want to use those scores, please use them on a page level, not on a domain level. And second is the way those scores are made. It's a secret sauce by SEO magicians who, I don't know, they don't tell us.
It's better getting a link to your site from a popular page on another site, even if that site isn't that popular itself. If a link from the most popular page on a average website is better than a link from an unpopular page on a very good website.
And we have that's definitely something like, okay, do what I say, don't do what I do. But we both have blogs, old blogs. That's not an ideal structure. People are wasting also by not working out well internal linking. For example, a blog is fine for a personal diary, but the fact that you classify the post by date has no value from a relationship point of view. I mean, I think, in my opinion, the blog structure is not good for SEO, like e-commerce also.
It depends on how well you connect what you've written in the past. I'm writing a blog post now on Google using machine learning to identify opinions in articles, and they want to show in search results opinion-based news because they want to add more diversity to those news sources. So first thing I did in writing this was saying, okay, I wrote about how Google identifies top stories for news. I'm going to link to that post. And I'm going to link from that post, which I wrote a year ago, to this new post. So right away, it's going to get more linking value because it's going to rank higher because it's got some links.
You do that a lot in your post manually. But the problem is people will get like a related post plugin, and that doesn't work very well. But now when I work with WordPress and I developed a plugin to do that, I use the pages, not the post, because I don't want to have the dates hierarchy. I want to classify my content differently than by date. But regardless, even today in 2020, especially big sites, they are sitting on a hidden treasure, on a hidden PageRank treasure, and hidden plain how you need to take control over your website and do good content, especially with all the content you have. You already analyze which page or which post is the leader, and which has, you have the parent, you have the child. It's all in your head. I see it in the way you interlink your content. You have a very clear view. But that's you. What about regular people? What advice would you give, because it seems like common sense? Okay, you're going to link this to that. But if you have to give one advice to one metric, what should people rely on to decide what link makes sense between two pages?
When you're writing something, search for it on your website. Search for what might be related. understand your website and take advantage of it.
Mm.
Understand those connections as you're writing something new. Because if you can work them together, build those connections,
Mm-mm.
uh,
Interesting.
you're giving value to your readers. You're
Mm-mm.
saying, okay, this could be approached a little bit differently. And Google probably did about 10 years ago, and they tried this approach. I wrote about it here.
Mm. You give context.
Yeah.
So next, before we move on to the reasonable surfer,
Yeah.
can you please tell us about the random surfer and why the random/reasonable surfer is so important linked to the PageRank?
So Google sometimes creates models of searcher behavior and how they expect people to search. And these influence their ranking algorithms, especially ones dealing with links. The random surfer model said somebody might come to a web page, click on any link on that web page, and go somewhere else.
Mm.
What are the odds that someone clicks on any link on your web page and ends up arriving at your site, your page?
Mm-mm.
Those odds we're calling PageRank. We've a metric that describes it, that is based on how links are interconnected to each other on the web of links, the connection of links and of collection of nodes, which are pages, and links between them. At some point, the higher your page rank, the higher your odds are of somebody ending up on your website following a random surfer model.
And then came our friend.
So somebody at Google said, okay, that's not how people click on links. They don't choose links at random. They actually look at the page, look at what the anchor text is, how large the fonts are, what color they are, stuff like that. And that describes how likely it might be that somebody clicks on a link. So we're going to try what we're calling a reasonable surfer model. And a reasonable surfer model pays attention to different features associated with links, like the locations on page that a link might be at. Like if you look at this page, it's more likely that somebody might click on a link that's within the main context, middle of the page, rather than one of the right sidebar items.
And that's Jeff Dean, who
Jeff Dean, the guy who's in
yeah.
charge of the Google Brain team right now. Yeah.
So definitely not. He's been in search since the beginning, right?
He's
like 30 years.
He's been one of the early people at Google. 22 years? Yeah.
So what's very interesting here is that the placement of the link on the page suddenly makes sense because there is context. And even furthermore today, where Google can analyze even better the content, what comes before and after the link and where stands the link is huge. It's very, very important, and it does make a difference. And that's thanks to the reasonable surfer. But how does that link with the PageRank? Can I use the image of the reasonable surfer as a backpack with the PageRank? It carries around, or
So Google will look at anchor text and say, okay, what are the odds that someone's going to click on your link to your privacy policy? Probably not the most important thing, but for some people it is. And some people will click on that link. Most people won't.
But it doesn't influence the PageRank distribution because the terms of service page will get as much PageRank as the, I don't know, the blog link.
So the reasonable surfer model specifically points out terms of service and says, okay, we're not going to pass much PageRank through that.
It does.
Yeah, it calls that one out. It says, no, that's one of those that we don't give much PageRank to. When people were under the random surfer model, when people were doing PageRank sculpting, that was the one that they would purposefully no follow.
Oh,
And
that's yeah. Let's go back. Let's go back in history for a second here. I want to pull the Matt Cutts article when he got mad about PageRank sculpting and nofollow.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us for
So that's the one where he started out by saying, okay, from the day that we launched PageRank, it was different than what was on paper because we had to actually implement it in the real world. It was no longer just theory.
So yeah, the nofollow is what I call the condom of the web, meaning it cuts off the page rank. Okay, Matt Cutts is not ranking for Matt Cutts anymore. Search engine land took over. Okay, hold on, let me search. So yeah, the condom of the web appeared, and it started with a good idea. But then people started using the nofollow attribute to sculpt, meaning to drain or to drive PageRank in certain directions and to cut off the flow of PageRank. Typically on an e-commerce website, you would send PageRank towards certain categories and cut it off from others. Then
People are using JavaScript on click events to avoid passing PageRank through links.
So that's when Matt Cutts got pissed. He said, "Party's over, guys. Distribution says the same. Nofollow or not nofollow will not make a difference." Well, no, I think it counts a little bit less. But anyway, it was a good trick. It was a good idea, but Google killed it really quickly. SEOs were not able to benefit from this little trick for very long. But the nofollow, let's just digress on nofollow for a second. What's your point of view on the nofollow attribute? It came out around what, 2005? Looking back, do you think it was a good idea? Do you think it's beneficial? Do you think it worked?
Purpose to limit the value of links in blog comments was worth doing. There were too many people who were spamming my blog, writing comments that had links in them because they thought that it was an easy way to build links.
Yeah, and you've always been monitoring your comments, so a lot of people were not monitoring their comments. That was the original intent, but then today,
then people said, okay, if you want to link to something, but you don't want to give it credit, you don't want fast PageRank to it. Say it's like you're pointing out an example of something you don't like much. So you don't want to give them credit, but you want people to see it. You can still link to it. You can use a nofollow attribute, and that'll go to it. So Google sort of planted the seeds of linking without passing PageRank.
But then it moved on to becoming PageRank greedy.
They told people that if someone buys a link and you link to it using nofollow as an attribute, you don't have to worry about getting penalized for having bought that link.
No. What I'm saying is, for example, if you take the example of Wikipedia, or other website, press websites, they no follow every single outbound link. They don't play the game anymore.
Forbes did that, and Wikipedia did that, and it's like, if you're going to be linked to by Wikipedia because they're giving you credit for something, it's like a citation. It's like the original PageRank citations from scientific papers. That concept, and those should pass PageRank. And
Yeah, agree.
it's just saying, no, we don't want to bother with that SEO stuff. Let's just remove it.
Yeah, that's where I disagree with the use of nofollow. And
So when Google said, okay, we're changing no follow attributes from directives to hints, what that means is Google's taking no follow back. They're removing the discretion. They're adding discretion again. They can decide whether or not they want to give PageRank to a link, regardless of whether it has no follow attribute or not. So all those Wikipedia pages with no follows, they can say, we think these are valuable. We think they're reasonable. The links, they've gotten rid of all the links. So we're not afraid of giving the links that are on the pages value.
Interesting. And now let's move on to another. I don't know how to introduce this one. Maybe you can help me out. Because it's about who is in relation to what and why, and how Google could start to figure out relationships from a topic point of view.
So I like looking at the inventors' names on these things, and this patent is another one from Jeff Dean. So that. So what was impressive about this was it talked about what actually happens when Googlebot comes and visits a website and crawls from page to page to page, collecting information about anchor text, pointing to other pages about what's linking where, and how they use that information. It's very different from the way Googlebot works now, but they talk about making anchor maps on pages. So they take this page, for instance, and make a list of all the links from this page and all the anchor text in those links, and they can if there are blocks of links on a page that are repeated more than once, say for instance in a top level navigation, but then maybe in footers, they can say we're only going to give these links credit once.
Okay, makes sense. And everybody here, remember, filed July 3rd, 2003. So that's okay. We are in the early days, and it's a series, so we'll move on to the future. But what's very interesting is that even back then, they were trying to figure out a way of understanding what makes a relationship valuable or not on the page and within the pages.
So it's not surprised the guy who wrote this wrote The Reasonable Surfer.
Yeah, they're going hand in hand, of course.
Yeah.
To finish, oh look, this is interesting. I didn't see this, but this is coming back. This is coming back on the news these days.
Yeah, concepts are related, and they come back up frequently.
Yeah, to end up this discussion, next time we will go into the Google Zoo Panda Penguin, which is a huge breakthrough in the history of SEO and Google. But this is from 2005.
I wrote about it in 2005 because it was granted then. it was filed in 2003. It took a couple of years for the patent office to say, okay, we'll go with this.
But it's incredible. Back then, I mean, 2004, okay, published 2005, and they were already into predictive search. They were already trying. This
is why I was reading patents back then. Absolutely.
This is very impressive. For the time, I was stunned when I read this, because I was like, "Wow, this is pretty high tech." When you want to, before the searcher finishes entering the search query, the search system identifies and sends a portion of the query, blah blah blah, and returns. Wow, wow.
It's autocomplete without using the words autocomplete.
Yeah, and again, it was back then. They didn't even have SSDs on the computers. We didn't have the bandwidth. They didn't. No, very impressive. It's and when you know how complicated it is to build a search engine, I digged deep into it with the project Quant.com. And Apple has been 10 years. They've been working on their search engine. It's coming out a little bit now, some features this year. Google is most definitely very impressive. Why do you think they came out ahead so strong? Bing didn't take it seriously? MSN back then? The other ones didn't try hard enough? Yahoo?
Microsoft didn't connect things together well. You'd see concepts and ideas come out from Microsoft Asia that were brilliant.
Oh my God.
Wouldn't show up in Bing, wouldn't show up in MSN.
You just remind me something. I had this reflection I had this thought back then, because I remember it was MSN Australia did something, and MSN USA didn't even talk about it. Well, it's same language, okay? English, Australia. They were like, I was like, what? They don't even talk to each other, Australia and America. So yeah, you're right. Maybe
Microsoft came out with a visual page segmentation in 2003. And Google didn't come up with segmentation until 4 years later. Microsoft in 2006 had object level ranking, where they talked about some of the semantic type stuff that Google started doing with the knowledge graph in 2012. And Microsoft was doing it in 2006.
Okay. So yeah, they.
So in some ways, Microsoft was ahead of Google, but there were parts of Microsoft, like Microsoft Asia.
And some of the Yahoo patents were also very interesting.
All three search engines had talented search engineers, smart people working for them.
Yeah, very interesting to look back at now, because we don't appreciate enough where we come from and where we are today, and really appreciate, because we have the unique opportunity of having one single individual who documented, and I'm not talking about just a timeline of the Google updates, okay? That's easy. No, documented everything that you documented throughout time, and the way you even jump from one patent to another, saying, okay, they said this, but remember when back then, what we explained earlier, okay, how you connect all the dots, and do you sometimes you say that you get lost in a rabbit hole when you dig with the scientific papers, But with the patents, do you have a clearer picture of what's going on?
I think I've spent enough time going back and forth between them, seeing how they're connected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, spending time writing about specific patents means that I do have the opportunity to revisit what I've written before.
And like I said before, the fact that you really know very well the people behind those algorithms helps also, because you know their mindset, you know where they want to go and what they want to achieve, because algorithms are just algorithms, you know. You need people to make them anyway. Okay, so yes, I think we could have spoken about so many things. But I think we'll go straight next time into the Google Zoo, even if I took some notes here about some interesting stuff. But the main value is, if I want to summarize discussion here, PageRank still matters. It's still used.
It's not the same PageRank. It's not your grandfather's PageRank, but it still matters.
Still matters. Domain authority, beware. If you want to use one of those scores, please use it on the page level, not on the domain level.
I understand that it was created as a convenience more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's not actual real metric used by search engines, but it's something to make it easier for you to make decisions about where to get links from.
Take it as a trend, as a like more or less kind of thing. And then I would, anybody listening, it's very undervalued, this reasonable surfer. Not so many people talk about it. People talk about
I love the fact that it's based upon user models. It's based upon how people click on web pages, and they evolve that model over time from the random surfer to the reasonable surfer. Mm-hmm. They say, okay, let's make our model reflect how people actually look at web pages, how they view them, how they react to them, what the chances are they click on certain links. Because we got it wrong when we first started. PageRank was good, but it didn't get everything. We evolved it.
And if you do it well, the reasonable surfer, you can make it leave one page, go to a page from another website, then another, and then come back to you. That's just a pro tip, but it does work not only in theory, and it's not so difficult to do. It's just about, again, who is in relation to why. It does have to make sense, and you have to make a path easier for the crawler to come back to you, and that's the job.
If somebody's interested in a specific topic, and you provide links from your page about that topic to other things they'd probably be interested in, they'll probably follow those.
Yeah. And instead of being greedy and not following the putting a no follow, no. Let the PageRank flow, please. Let it flow. Let it come back to you, because if you deserve it, it will come back to you.
If you design it right, chances are.
I think it's Gary Ives who once said that, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. Ives? How do you Gary Ives?
I'm not sure of either.
Yeah, it's 2ILLVS. Okay, Gary. Sorry if you're listening. He once said something along the lines of no, I'm lost. I don't even know what I wanted to say. But it doesn't matter. He's the one, yes, who said that if it makes sense, search is not that, it's complicated. You have so many layers, so many algorithms, so many engineers, but the bottom line, what they want to achieve, is a lot more obvious than what people think. it's really about providing value. And we speak about it on the next podcast, where you explain. We go back to your beginnings, where you studied law and you first started to apply this idea of connecting dots or entities before even it became a buzzword in SEO. But yeah, at the end of the day, search is complicated. It's very difficult to build a search engine.
Yeah.
But to please a search engine is not that difficult if you think about it. If you really take your approach of knowing the algorithms, but always respecting the person, the user.
The value of a search engine is what searchers give it.
Exactly.
If they're looking for certain types of things and a search engine allows them to find it, they'll keep on coming back to the search engine and using it.
Problem is, SEOs don't want to hear that. Okay, they want a quick trick. Bill, you're wasting it. Okay, you're not giving any secret to rank to. I want to raise my traffic by 257% in less than 27 days. And
there are ways to do that. But they often require common sense rather than any tricks.
That's something we'll talk about it a little bit later, which is how to give Google what it wants, future, instead of what it has or had. And that's the secret, but no spoiler. That's coming up in a couple of episodes.
Okay.
On this note, Bill, I wish you well.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for this wonderful episode. And next time, Google, Panda, Penguin,
The whole zoo.
the zoo apocalypse when SEO almost died. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.